If you're watching this channel, you probably didn't need me to tell you that Valve dropped an update last night adding a bunch of new stuff to the game. Most importantly, the revamped train, 2 wingman maps, 2 new community maps, and a new damage prediction feature.
Call Vive lazy one more time. Call Vive lazy one more time.
Which, don't worry, I'll make a video on specifically, since there are going to be a lot of updates in the future that are going to fix a lot of the current issues, I assume. I'm kind of looking at it in the same way to where I researched the snap tap auto kick feature that was really way too crazy at the start. So these bugs that you see on Twitter and whatnot are going to be ironed out pretty soon. I think though that this feature that Valve added is the most overlooked update to the game that came with it, but it's probably the most impactful one for the future of the game. And that's this new map guide mode for train. So if you don't know how to get to it, you just click play, go to practice, and then you select train. It has load map guide and you hit go. I have some feedback that I want to give on this mode, as well as some compliments to give, but I think that this mode is exactly what the game needs more of. You know, I don't actually play Dota 2, but when I tried to, as a new player, the game is actually giving you a tutorial saga, and they've had this for a really long time that you have to go through before playing matches, and it's for new players only. And it explains all sorts of things about the game that were pretty unclear if you didn't know anything about MOBAs. I really hate MOBAs though, so I stopped playing after the tutorials because I still had no fucking clue what was happening. I think that the biggest barrier to entry for a lot of CS players is the nade knowledge gap and the map knowledge gap. And I think that putting this into the game natively is a huge step forward for onboarding new players into the game. I really hope that Valve in the future adds a community branch to this feature, to where people like Nard out here or pro players can share maps that compile dozens of very useful basic nades for every map. I could really see this being put natively into the game, which would essentially be a creative mode or kind of like a nade book style of map where you'd be able to save your own nades on a map that transfers with your Steam cloud save, for example. This would be a great feature, and I think it would push the game's skill floor way up, since if you could download a map that's constantly updating with pro nade guides for more complex nades like running throws or W jump throws, which I'm going to talk about later in this video, then more people would be able to enjoy the complicated nade meta that high-level players have evolved over the last decade. I want you to remember that pro players used to not throw nades on any map, and it was a shock to the community when Astralis did this in a match.
Astralis, these grenades could do all of the work for them. 3 of them going over the wall, 1 on Exist, 1 on Crims. Everybody's catching fire. Twist goes down.
And if I'm being real, these nades look like the average pro execute in 2024 on every single map. And giving new players a chance to easily learn them without having to find obscure YouTube shorts on how to do it will just make the game better for everyone. Nard out here, please never stop uploading, I love you. I have a few suggestions that I think Valve should take a look into. For one, I think that W jump throwing is already commonplace for high level players, as it's basically just required for multiple people to know the instant window smokes on Mirage, for example, and the instant house smokes on Ancient. And you really can't throw these without W jump throws. There's no lineup that goes far enough. So I think that having a practice map with these lineups, and you can maybe call it an advanced map guide or an advanced nade guide, would bring to light this part of the game for lower knowledge players. It's just a suggestion. Now, a few gripes that I have generally, which would be really great quality of life options, start with the grenade camera. And I think the grenade camera update for jump throws is really good, but I personally think that you should be able to bind a normal mode and a jump throw mode and a W jump throw mode. Because having constant modes means you don't have to hold down your jump key to see where the nades are going to land, which right now is just kind of annoying. And it means that you can just scan the map for spots while holding mouse 1. I know that in CSGO, Refrag used to have this feature on their servers, and they still might, but I don't use Refrag, so I don't really know. Sorry. Also, a feature that used to be on ESCA Refrag when Refrag was still a part of ESCA was the nade finder, which I'm gonna be honest, it was scuffed. But you used to be able to stand in a position and have the game spam throw nades for you to try to find a lineup that landed in a specific spot. So let's say you wanted to find a crazy smoke on Anubis that landed in a really specific spot. If you picked a really easy spot to stand in, the game would try to brute force find a smoke that landed in that position. It was really scuffed though, and it didn't work half the time. But sometimes it did work, which is pretty cool. So maybe this is something that Valve could implement in the future in like a practice or like a creative mode. Something that I really think should be expanded upon is the fact that this is called a map guide, but it only shows 4 nades on T side. And if I can be harsh for a second, I don't really consider this to be a map guide, but an exec nade guide. I think if we were gonna call it a map guide, it would need things like an earliest meeting point line, or something like early round suggested utility for each player. But this is getting a bit too deep, if I'm being honest, since the meta is constantly shifting, as well as starting CT and T default nades, they're just always constantly changing. So it's gonna be hard for Valve to keep up with this meta. So again, I think it would be really good for the game if you could upload your guides to the workshop, if you could even make them in the first place. Personally, since I make a lot of videos teaching people how to play Counter-Strike, it'd be really great if I could put these maps into the game. Also, I'd really like to see the grenade camera tweak. And for one, there's still a bug in the game where if you throw a smoke that obviously missed, like like you can tell it's gonna miss, it bounced off a wall, and you try to throw another one too quickly, it'll still pan to the missed lineup. And I think that if you're spamming nades, for the most recent grenade, it should take priority and show on the camera so that you can tweak the lineup. For example, if I whiff a smoke and it bounces off the wall when I didn't expect it to, obviously as the zoomer that I am, I'm just gonna be throwing one another pixel over. So I wanna see that one. Last thing I wanna talk about is the grenade reticle. While I think it's good that Valve is trying to encourage people to use it more with this map guide, I seriously can't name a single player who throws nades often that uses this feature. For one, while I think it's good to have, remembering the lineup with the other crosshairs is really just overwhelming, when there's probably a way easier way to line it up without having to hold down the key. And something that I realized while I was typing the script for the video, since again, I really don't use this feature that much, and I don't know anybody who does, is the fact that in order to activate it, you have to hold down the key. And it's kind of scary to do that because it's really easy to let go of your key if you hold it down for too long. You know, I guess this is a skill issue, but it's something to consider as to why people might not like using this feature. I don't think Valve tracks it, but if they tracked how many people actually use this feature, I would assume it's really not that many people. In short though, this is a W update, and Valve, please send me a monthly bonus for the spray update. You're welcome.